co-host.
Hi, everyone.
This
So
will
my
also
name
be
is,
available in the portal later on.
oh, okay. So my name is Tyler, and thank you, Brandy, for such an amazing introduction. And I am really excited to be here today to talk about astrocartography. Any chance that I get to kind of share this concept with anyone, I'm jumping on it because I feel as though everyone should know about this, especially since we're in the age of intentional traveling and everyone is just, always going somewhere. So why not travel with a little bit more intention if you're looking for specific energies in your life? So Astrocartography, I'm going to actually put a presentation on. Brandy, did you switch over everything so I can kind of start sharing? Let's
Yes, I
see.
made you co-host so you could
Okay.
share.
All right. So let me, okay. Can you all see the presentation that's up right now? Okay, perfect. So astrocartography, it's basically, I want to try to simplify it as much as I can for the call because I know that it is a lot. And is anyone like familiar with astrology in general? You guys can kind of give me a thumbs up so that way. Okay. So astrology is basically when it has a couple of different branches. And so the branches that we're going to be talking about today is the study of places, being as though astrology covers people. So astrocartography, or it's also known as locational astrology, it handles the places. So when you're pulling up your birth chart, essentially all of those planets at those points are going to be shown to you on an actual map because they all have specific positions in the world. So before we get a little bit more into that, I am a 2-4 emotional projector. I have known about human design, I'd say for about almost like 2 years now. And so I was kind of in my authority by basically following my emotions and things like that. But I wasn't too much into my strategy when it comes to, waiting for the invitation. And so finding out about human design honestly literally changed my life. And it helped me to understand that, my energy and how I need to focus on one thing. I was always the person kind of bouncing around doing a couple of different things, trying to see what feels right on my heart. And when I came across astrocartography, it was kind of a no-brainer for me, being as though I am a Sagittarius rising. My life has always been about traveling and finding a home. So, as I have here, like my right angle across of the four ways is just like, putting everything, putting all the patterns together. And honestly, astrocartography kind of does that for me. And then it also allows me to be able to share those other patterns with other people by showing them the energy that are waiting for them in other places. So I have so far lived on a couple of different lines like Pluto, Venus, and I'm actually going to be visiting my moon line soon, which is actually in a couple of days. So that's going to be really exciting. And I'm going to get into kind of what all of that means. So to get a little bit more deeper into astrocartography and basically how it can assist you, what you're trying to do is again be intentional with the energy. So I like to be, as though I'm a holistic wellness coach as well. It's not just about, focusing on your mind, body, and spirit. It's also making sure that all of the work that you're putting into, developing yourself, that you are actually in an environment that's conducive for that, right? So that you can continue to just flow in life. And astrocartography is not an end all be all. It's not a magic pill, just like human design isn't. But once you start to be able to work with the energy a little bit better, your life can kind of make sense and you can kind of pick and choose certain areas of your life that you want to focus on, which I find to be extremely fun and interesting. So when it comes to astrocartography, the main focuses or how we really use it is we focus on the planetary lines. So just like in astrology, you know, we have Pluto, we have Jupiter, we have Uranus, we have Mars, you know, all of those types of planets. We're essentially taking what those planets mean and putting it with how it can correlate with our lives. So if we are looking to expand our business, we are going to follow the planetary line of Jupiter. If we're looking to have a transformative spiritual experience, we are going to follow the planetary line of Pluto. So these are just kind of like some examples of how we would utilize it. Now, when it comes to wanting to, let's say you want to begin deconditioning in human design, a good way for you to kind of cross the two or interconnect astrocartography with human design is that you can, let's say, travel to your sun line. So as I have here, the sun line is about identity, right? So if you are, you know, focusing on your human design and you're trying to make sure that you're in an environment that's conducive to the new version of yourself that's going to be emerging, you could potentially move to your sun line. That would be a really great way of putting these two together. Or let's say you want to be a little bit more disciplined about the fact that you are wanting to focus on anything related to human design or actually implement that into your life, you could maybe go to your Saturn line, because Saturn is about discipline and it's about, you know, really understanding and getting clear on your goals. So those are just like, you know, some beginner ways that you can actually use it. So I will ask, like, just in case, like, does anybody have any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Is it making sense? Good. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about is I'm going to give beginner-friendly ways on how to plan a successful trip. It's not as difficult as it seems. It's really just about, like I said, setting our intentions. So when we are wanting to understand the type of experience that we want to have. So like, let's say, for example, you want to use it in conjunction with astrocartography. I'm sorry, with human design. So let's say you want to meet people that are going to allow you to have an experience that's going to, let's say, use projector as an example, that's going to give you the invitations, right? We would then say, we would then choose the descendant line, because the descendant line is about other people and how they will react and come into our lives. But let's say we want to more so embody that projector or that generator energy, we would go to the ascendant line, because that is us and that's the way that we would present ourselves to the world. Let's say you're wanting to be intentional about a space where you can focus on your self-development, then that's when we would choose the IC line, because that's about the home. And then also we have the MC line, which is like your public image. So that's another line if you want to, let's say, use human design to start to follow your career. That would be the line that you would use in that case. So with having that understanding, the next thing that we would most likely do is really kind of get intentional on the actual energy that we want, which we talked about a little bit before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Brandy's chart as an example. And I haven't pulled it up yet because I want you all to kind of get an idea on how to navigate the website. So can you see this astro.com? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So
Tyler, is that your site?
The
Is
way
that your
that you
website?
would utilize this is oh no, astro.com is not my website. It's a public website that basically it's called locational strategy or locality, and it'll pull up your actual map for you, which I'm going to actually show you all how to pull that up. And so that way, when you're watching the recording, you can go and check your own map. So, all right. So this is what the website looks like. And we're going to, let me move this over here. We're going to go to free horoscopes, and then we're going to go to locational astrology, and it's called Astro Click Travel. And for just like human design, you need to know your exact birth time. So if you're pulling it up with me and you have that information, that is what you'll need. So you'll go to add, and you'll just type in all of your information here, and then it will in turn pull up your map. So let me actually make sure that I'm pulling up Brandy's map. And Brandy, what was the specific energy that you were looking for when you were going to Mexico? I can't remember. Or was it just general?
Oh, for Mexico, it was general. For Italy, it was I guess purpose and passion.
Okay, got you. So once you click on your name and you pull up your chart, you can press go. Now, I'm going to, this is how you would pull up the specific area that you are wanting to go to. So they have it by region. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on North America. And so you're going to see all of these crazy looking lines, but how you discern between what line is which, they do have the, let me zoom in so you can see, they do have the planets, right? So this is the sun, this is the moon, this would be considered Saturn, Jupiter, and so on and so forth. So remember how we talked about you would see descendant, right? Or you would see MC or IC. These are the specific lines that you would pay attention to when you're wanting to be specific about the actual experience that you want to have in the particular place. So for Brandy, for example, in Mexico, she has Pluto and she has the North Node. So the North Node just so happens to be her IC line, which would give her the feeling of home, or it would make her feel attached to her lineage. Or the descendant for Pluto, that would give her a transformative experience, but that would be based on the people that she meets. So it could be that the place in Mexico, or not, well, not the place in Mexico, but it could be that Mexico actually gives her a transformative feeling when it comes to the actual place and the people that she will meet, right? So that's an example how if she wanted to be intentional about Mexico, that she would utilize it. Now, let's say there's a place, right, that doesn't have a line on it. If you, or let's say there's a place that you don't know about, you can essentially tap into the energy of that planet based on what you see on your map. So let's say you don't know if you want to go to your descendant or ascendant line, you would essentially just embody the energy that the line is that's going across the specific place that you would like to visit. So that's another way that you can do it as well. So with Brandy, I'm going to try to explain it like as best as I can. So with Brandy, when she gets to Mexico, depending on where certain things in her chart will shift, because once you move to a place, although your birth chart is going to remain your birth chart, they do tend to shift in different houses. And if you're familiar with astrology, the houses are basically like categories of our lives. So we have a category that's for ourselves. We have a category that's for our money, for our short distance travel, for the way that we view our home, for our creativity, and so on and so forth. So when she gets to Mexico, although her birth chart remains the same, her planets will shift into houses. So depending on where her Pluto is shifted into, that's most likely where she can potentially feel the most transformation in her life. Or like wherever her north node moves into, that could probably most likely be the house that she experiences the more transformation. So we don't technically know exactly how the transformation will express itself, but we do know that that is the type of energy that's waiting there for her. So let's say you wanted to take action on some human design. She can basically go to her Mars life, being as though Mars is all about drive. So that would be a really good way for her to be intentional about that as well. Now, I do have something that is called, just like in human design, we have the synastry. The same thing can be done with astrocartography. It is a little advanced, but if you're familiar with how to read the planets and kind of how to read an astrology chart, it'll kind of be a little easy to formulate a story. So I do want to show you all of that because it's really cool. And actually, Brandy's Mexico, a lot of her planets match. And so that way I can kind of give you all a synopsis of what Mexico can actually bring to her, just based on the actual map. So let me pull that up. Come on, okay. So with the synastry, what it does is it takes the birth chart of the actual place. So Mexico, just like they have like a founded date, that is what essentially I'm using along with Brandy's birth chart, and it'll kind of put them together and show me a story. Mexico. And Brandy. I'm almost finished pulling it up. Okay, so I know it looks a little crazy, but this is Brandy's, essentially her Mexico chart, right? So when we are looking at the synastry for her in Mexico, Mexico's planetaries lines, or the where their planets are located in the houses, is going to be on the inside. The outside is Brandy. Okay, so these are all her actual planets. But if you would take a look at Brandy's original chart, you will see that all of these planets are actually in other houses. So this is a perfect visual example of how the houses would shift for Brandy. So when I'm looking at this type of chart, I'm looking to see what planets essentially conjoin with each other. So if you can see how we have Mars here in the 9th house in Leo, her actual natal Mars is conjoining with the Mars of Mexico. So that's really cool, right? It's basically letting us know that this is going to be a place where she's going to be really motivated and where she can take a lot of action. And the fact that it's in Leo in the ninth house is all about foreign travel. It's all about long distance things. It's all about philosophy and basically just expanding your mind. So this could be a really good place for her to expand her mind, have a lot of action in things that are foreign travel. So I think when I was telling Brandy, like, based on this Mars energy, if she wants to take action on applying for, her house sits in Italy, this would be a great place because Mars is pretty much shining a light on the Leo part of her chart. And so she could use that energy to take a lot of action in that area and most likely have a lot of success. So another example of something that I would look for is, let me see here. What I like to look for is even if they may not be in front of each other, you can see that she has her Venus here and Uranus, right? What the cool thing is that Mexico's Venus and Uranus are literally in the same house. So that's another indication of how these energies can kind of work with her in that place. So if she's looking for any type of change in her Venusian lifestyle, so basically anything that's of her feeling good, her feeling herself, her taking action, and anything that's towards spirituality, that would be a really good place for her to do it because these two planets are working together for her in this particular place. So if you pull up your chart and you see this, those are the energies that you want to embody the most when you go to these places. So it's not about, it is about wanting to get clear on what you want, but it's also about when you're utilizing astrocartography, what are the planets telling you about the story in that particular place so that when you get there, you can actually begin to embody that energy. So we're not trying to go against it, but we're also trying to create a plan and how we can actually um, become a better version of ourselves in these places. And we do that by following the story of the particular place. So what I also like is she has an asteroid called Juno, which is this funny looking asteroid here. And it basically will allow her to have a really good relationship with these two planets. And so it's a really good place for her to focus on her spirituality. And she may bond with Mexico because of that. And so that's kind of how I read that as well. Um, Now, I think that that's probably a good space to stop when it comes to the synastry, because if I probably go any further, um, I can probably potentially confuse you all, and I don't want to do that. So I just wanted to give you kind of a visual of how a lot of the planets will already have I'm sorry, a lot of the places will already have a story for you. And when you're pulling up your map, you'll be able to see that. And that's what you can actually focus on and be intentional about when you're traveling utilizing astrocartography. So, so far, I know that was a lot, but so far, does anybody have any questions? Are you seeing something on the map that you would like me to look a little further into?
I'm living on my Chiron line, and I definitely noticed that. And I knew this. I kind of dabbled with astrocartography because I was like fascinated. And
Mm-hmm.
then I realized like living on the Chiron line, it
Yeah.
was yeah. And
We
I
got to
guess that
get you from there.
if I don't move away from here, it's just gonna keep like sucking me into that energy, right? So mm.
Yes. We have to get you away from Chiron. I know a couple of different people that are on their Chiron line right now, and their life is never ending. It's a never ending cycle of the universe consistently trying to make you self-develop versus it being this gradual thing. So definitely probably you want to check into your sun line or your moon line so that you can kind of have a more relaxed type of, mindset or just a relaxed environment in general. And I will definitely say go to an ascendant line versus a descendant line so that you can kind of you can kind of start moving into your power outside of all of the things that the universe are trying to consistently show you. So you can kind of have a little bit more control in that sense, although we don't try to go against, the planetary energies as much because then we'll drive ourselves crazy. But definitely, as soon as you can, get away from
Yeah.
Chiron. Yes.
I just want to ask also like so the ascendant line and also North Node is pretty close. So like
Okay.
a couple of hours away from Toronto where I'm at. So what
Mhm.
happens with the North Node line?
So the North Node, it is also pushing you towards getting you, so wherever the North Node is in your chart, it is essentially pushing you towards that type of energy so that you can eventually embody it. The North Node is not as harsh as Chiron because the North Node is probably, it's going to give you a little bit more of a softer push versus Chiron, because Chiron is like, he's the wounded healer, right? He's here to heal himself so that he can heal other people. So the universe is like, you got to hurry up and get it done so that you can start helping people. And the North Node is kind of like, no, you take your time, and this is a little gradual. But let's say if you go to a place that you have a strong North Node, it may not feel so gradual. Let's say if your North Node is tied with the North Node of that actual place, best believe you will be having some type of spiritual awakening in that specific area. And it just, how it depends and how it shows up in your life is, you won't know until you get there. So the North Node is similar to Chiron, but it's just not as harsh. But if you're living directly on that line, it can feel that way. Um, so I hope that answers your question, or I intend that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We
Yes.
got Michelle asking too.
Yes. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Tyler. I'm finding
Hey.
this interesting. I was wondering, I know we just heard about Chiron. I was wondering if there's anything else to be cautious of with other lines, like maybe lines that they have good potential, but also things to be careful of or
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yes, that is a really good question. And the one planet that I can say that so in astrocartography, we have what it's called general benefic planets. And a general benefic planet would be Jupiter or Venus. But not everyone has a well aspected Jupiter or Venus.
Ah,
So I'm gonna use this chart as an example. So do you see these blue lines, these red lines, the green lines? When
yeah.
you are pulling up your actual when you're pulling up your actual astrology map, whatever planet has no red lines coming from it, that is going to be your personal benefic planet. So Mexico, the moon would be a benefic planet for Mexico because there isn't any energy that's squaring their natal moon. And another example would be, what planet is this down here? Oh, sorry. Must have clicked something. Another example, well, Chiron isn't a planet, but this Chiron would be for Mexico, which is interesting because a lot of people have a lot of spiritual awakenings in Mexico. But Chiron would be a really good line for Mexico. So that's kind of an example. So um, when you see Mars here, Mars, I wouldn't choose Mars as a benefic planet because it's squaring Uranus, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot live or be near those lines. It just means that you may find that energy a little difficult to maneuver through if that's not something that you're already maneuvering in your life. So mind you, a lot of the time when it comes to some of these planets, so like me, my benefic planet just so happens to be Pluto. I'm used to that rebirth energy. I'm used to always rebirthing myself, always doing different things. I'm always used to, you know, coming into contact with information that transformed my life. So it wouldn't be, bad for me to go to a Pluto line because I'm used to that energy. Do I always want to go through a transformation? Probably not, but I am used to it. So I know how to work through it quicker. So if you go to a planetary line and you're not used to working through certain things, it can be very, very challenging. But it's there to help you grow, right? As long as you're willing to work towards the things that are coming up in that area. So I might have gone on a little tangent, but I intend that I answered your question.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
Okay.
like wherever you go, the planets that are there, that's like the class you signed up for. And you got to make sure you're in
Mm-hmm.
that class.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So, like Ava, if I said that right, if once she moves away from her Chiron, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's not going to go through things when she's on her moon line. What happens is that it's probably going to give her, because the moon line is about your internal feelings, right? So if she goes to her moon line, now she's going to probably be thinking all of the things that she's gone through. And it may essentially make her emotional. The moon line is about your emotions, but it's there to help her get through that energy. It's here to help her alchemize it and say, you know what? I was living on my Chiron line and I've been going through all these different things, but this is how I feel about that experience. And that's how it'll kind of express itself. Or let's say when she goes to her sun line, it's not going to feel so like, her life is always trying to change her. It's going to feel liberating. She's going to start to take matters into her own hands. She can then start to be like, okay, you know what? I'm really feeling myself. So I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to, get out of this energy of consistently shifting and just be where I want to be right now. And she'll just have to be okay with that, right? So that's like another way that it can kind of express itself as well. Um, does anybody else have any other questions?
I do, Tyler, it's Brandy. I'm just, can
Hi.
you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so curious. How did you get into this?
That's a really good question. So being as I feel like my like that four in my profile is always putting in work for me. Because a lot of the things, being as though I lean more into my hermit in my two profile, I feel like when I meet people, they always bring something to my life somehow. So I actually ended up meeting someone. But before that, my cousin actually presented human design to me because I've never heard of it prior to that. And so that's another example of how that four is working. It's like the people in my life are just presenting things to me, and it's up to me to, accept the invitation of it. So that's how I found out about human design. And then the same thing kind of happened with astrology and astrocartography. Although I knew about astrology, I didn't really read it. I didn't read charts. I didn't know what it was. When I looked at a wheel, I was like, what the heck is a wheel? But once I started getting into astrology, I started getting like really fascinated by it because I can pick up things quickly. So when it came to astrocartography, another one of my friends, we were talking about astrology, and she was like, "Oh, have you ever heard of this thing that?" And she just like couldn't get the name of it. And so when she told me about it, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And we pulled up our maps that first day. And when I say I was obsessed, I was so obsessed because I was like, oh my goodness, like I was able, as y'all know, I have the right angle cross of the four ways. So I like to look in the past. I have to look in the past first to see how this correlates to my life. And so I looked at places that I've lived before, I've looked at places that I've traveled before, and I had those exact experiences that astrocartography said that I would. And so being that right angle cross, once I can prove something, I'm running with it. And so that's how I got into astrocartography. I was able to actually prove that this is something legit that I can actually implement in my life. And I'm all about trying to find ways to self-develop and actually be able to use the tools that we have and not just be in this hamster wheel, but actually applying it to our lives every day. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into astrocartography. And that was a year ago. So I am, still fairly new to astrocartography, but I've pretty much learned all there is to learn about it. And not a lot of people actually practice the synastry for this. And so I kind of like to, look at that as a little upper hand when I am basically letting people know that this is something that I do. I don't plan on stopping this because, like I said, when it came to me realizing that I'm a projector and I have to be the expert at something, this came at the perfect time. So now I can focus on this and continuously move forward because it's something that I'm really, really passionate about and it fits my lifestyle. So yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I was just commenting in the chat that your astrophotography story mimics my human design story, like the journey of how I got here.
Mm,
And it's just like when that thing comes into your life, you can't not undo it.
yeah.
There's something about it that just drives you closer and closer to it, and that desire to know more about it. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else
Yes.
have questions? Because I have a ton. Someone else want to jump in with something that popped out for them? All right, I'll keep going then. Yeah, you guys, if you want to put in the chat, that's fine too. If you just want to raise your hand, whatever works for you guys. Um, my other question, Tyler, is I love how you are able, for the knowledge that you have of human design, you are able to kind of sprinkle it in there as well. And a lot of us on the call, that is our main thing is human design. What would be a great, I guess, starting point for someone like us where we may not be as versed in astrology and definitely astrocartography, but it's something that could be really beneficial to our clients that we can offer them?
Yes. So I would say the main thing when it comes to astrocartography is knowing the planets. You don't, the synastry is just something that's just a little extra if you are wanting to kind of be intentional. And that's still something that has to be taught. But what doesn't have to be taught is just simply looking, let me try to pull it up again. Um, is just simply looking at an astrocartography map. So once you know already what the planetary lines mean, what each planet signify, or well, what each planet is known for, and what type of energy you want, that's kind of the basis for just utilizing it to travel. Now, if you do want to utilize it for actually being intentional about moving, then I would suggest having a little bit more information. But if you want to just say, oh, you know what, I want to go ahead and just visit a line, knowing what the planets mean, knowing the symbols, and knowing the type of energy that can be provided to you based on that actual planetary line. And what I can do is I can send you my presentation, and you can actually attach that um, to whatever it is that you're going to have in the group. That way, when people pull it up, they can know what the planets mean, and they can essentially know how to choose the energy. Now, let's say if you do want to get into the synastry and pulling up your relocated chart, because that's a whole nother thing as well. When you're pulling up your relocated chart for the actual place, then at that point, you would need to know what the houses mean. And you would essentially read the story of the planets, the house, and then the actual sign. But with astrocartography, I don't really focus on a sign as much. So basically just the planet and the house that it's in. And so that's how I would say would be a really good place to start, even if you want to suggest it to your clients. That would be a really, really good way to start, and it'd be very beginner friendly. And knowing once you pull this up, just taking a look in this area and then just dragging along to see exactly where the lines are leading you. So if you come here, you go to Mars, you can see that that's going to Cuba. So you can take a look at Cuba for a place that you can visit, and the Bahamas. And you can just pretty much just trace the line, even Toronto. So I'm actually going to check the chat too, just to make sure.
Shane, if you want to unmute, you're welcome to hop in, ask a question.
Yeah, I just so sorry if you mentioned this earlier at the beginning of the call, my daughter started crying, so I had to get up really quick. But so when we're looking at this, right, like I know you mentioned earlier, like I guess as a beginner here, the best line to look at would be like your north node, and was it Chiron? Or
No. So as a beginner, you can, if you're not going to go based off of your astrology, you can look at Jupiter and Venus.
Jupiter and Venus.
So
Okay,
those,
and
yeah, so those would be like the first two planets that you would probably want to look at, only because and now I'm actually just realizing there was a second part to Michelle's question that I didn't answer. So when you're looking up your Jupiter or your Venus, right? Let's say that depending on how it's aspected in your chart, it could bring too much expansion that you're probably not ready for, right? So if you choose Jupiter or Venus, just understand that whatever type of energy that you come across in those areas, if you're not ready to accept those opportunities, you can potentially miss out on them. So, for example, like if let's say I'm not ready to start doing presentations, but Brandy actually contacted me because I'm on my Jupiter line. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have this amazing opportunity, but I'm freaking out because it's something that I've never done before. Am I ready to do it? Am I going to accept what Jupiter expanded me on, or am I going to just shy away from it? So because let me tell you, when you get to Jupiter, something is going to pop up. Okay. It doesn't matter what category of life it is, something will pop up and it's going to try to expand you somehow. So if you're not ready for that, and if you're not able to recognize the synchronicities in life, you can potentially miss those opportunities, because it doesn't have to be this grand thing. What if it's just you just simply meet someone, right? And they want to invite you somewhere, but you're too scared to go because you're going alone. You never know what that event could have done for you, how it could have expanded you. So that's another example. Did I answer your question?
yeah, you did. And then I also wanted to ask, so like when we're looking at the line specifically, like for example, if we're just looking at Brandy's, right? Like let's say the line that through Mexico because she's going to Mexico.
Yeah.
Is it like Mexico as a whole she would experience something, or does she want to go to like one of the cities that the line actually falls on?
That's a good question. When it comes to black lines in astrocartography, what I mean by black lines, I mean Pluto, the North Node, and Chiron. I wouldn't want anyone to go directly on those lines. Now, the only reason why I say that is because the energy can be a little bit stronger. You do have a range of 200 miles to about, some people like to say 700, but I like to say 400. So anywhere between those miles, you can get the energy. Now, I haven't even showed you all the aspects. That's a whole nother thing, but I will pull it up. I will pull it up. So let's say you don't see a line, right? You can come here to the scalable map. And since we're in North America, I'm going to click on, most of the time, always click on all major aspects. Now, this is going to pull up this expanded, crazy looking chart. So let's say, for example, you don't want to be directly on this Pluto North Node. Well, she has a moon trine line right here that she can potentially choose any of these places to go to. But being as though it's in the same area, it could potentially soften the blow just a little bit, but she's still going to get all of these energies. Does that make sense? So like, I wouldn't, unless you want to really kind of, unless you really want to, I mean, you can. I was directly on my Pluto line. It ran directly through Phoenix, and I was there for a month. And I experienced a lot of like transformative things there. And I also realized that I'm prone to injury in Phoenix, but that's a whole nother story because I've been in that area about twice. And every time I go there, I get into something with body. So that's an example of how you might not want to be too close on the line because you never know how it can potentially affect you. Now, what I can say is don't let that scare you, because even if you travel to a place and you know nothing about the astrocartography, it can still express itself the exact same way. It's just that you know about it now. Okay, so that's an example of how you can kind of interplay with it. Like if you want to be directly on your Jupiter line, go for it. But if you want to be 200 miles outside of it, go for it. So that was a really good question. And it took me down, you know, giving you guys an example of how Phoenix. So for me, if I go to Phoenix, I'm only there for a couple days. The last time I was there, I in 2015, maybe a little after that, I drove over the line and I ended up needing to go to the hospital because the elevation was too much for my body personally. Another example, I went there in May. I was there for the entire month and I was in bed and I woke up and my ankle was sprained out of nowhere. And I'm like, what? My ankle was messed up for like 3 days. And I'm like, what's going on here? But that could just be how Phoenix and being directly on my Pluto line expresses itself. But mind you, when I came home, oh my goodness, I remembered how, is someone talking? I'm sorry, because it's kind of like breaking up. Okay. So that was
You're okay.
another
It
way,
was just
like,
feedback.
okay, perfect. So that was another way, like when I came home, I was very transformed. I actually started eating pink lady apples in Phoenix. I never liked apples like that. So now I can literally eat pink lady apples. I juice them all the time now. I realized that I need greenery in my life. And when I came home, I cried. Although Phoenix is beautiful, I didn't have as much greenery as I'm used to. So that is another way that it transformed me, because now I'm like, okay, if I go to another place, I know that's exactly what I need. So those are just examples, right? Those are little examples, but that's how, like I said, it's not going to always be this grand old thing, right? You know, your life is it's not, I don't mean to laugh, but you know, sometimes we, you know, we think that, oh, you know, my life is going to change, I'm going to get famous or something. It's like, no, it's subtle things that you'll realize, like, oh my goodness, like I've realized that now I do this or I do that because I went to this place. So yes.
Michelle had a great question too. She was asking, what if the lines cross over, say, the ocean, where there's nothing actually livable there?
Yeah, so that would just be a place that you won't focus on, because since we can't physically go there, but you can follow the line. So, you know, being as though, for like, the first thing that popped into my mind was this area here. But if I go up here, these lines go through Montgomery and Nashville. So Tennessee, you'll still get these exact lines, but you just have to follow them to see where on land you can actually be. So like, let's say, for example, there was no lines here in this area at all, but these same two lines could be in a different continent on an actual land place that you can visit. So a fun thing too about this as well, um, what I find is that based on my chart, the moon and Pluto, being as though they are my benefic planets, they have been calling me all over the world. And so when I checked my astrocartography map, those same lines were in Costa Rica. Those same lines were in, I believe it was Florida, which is where I'm about to go, and Thailand. And Michelle, you know that we just got invited to go to Thailand. And so when I checked my Thailand, I saw those lines and I was like, oh my goodness, I've been to all of these places that I felt called to. So those planets were calling me. And when I figured that out, I was like, oh yeah, there's no way I'm putting this down like ever, because that was just so cool. So if you look to places that you visited before, see what lines are there, see what places that call to you, and see if those lines are connected. And you'll know that that's your benefic planets trying to get you to a place to create a story for you. Now, I don't know if it's something that happens for everybody, but it is something that I saw in my chart. And I feel like the more that I look at other people's charts, the more I do readings, I'm finding that their benefic planets are essentially calling them in these specific places. So that to me is really cool, and I geek out about that a lot. So that's another way that you could utilize that energy if the planets are in the ocean.
Yeah. I It actually makes me curious if there's like anybody out there living their best life because their whatever line is in the ocean, but they like live on a boat or something like that.
Yes, that is a perfect way.
Yeah.
That is a perfect way. And my thing is, now that if you mention it that way, let's say you do follow those lines and you happen to, like you said, be on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Just because the middle of the ocean may not particularly, like I can't pull that center street up, you can still go into the middle of the ocean and embody the energy of those planets. So although there may not be a specific story that we can see in the middle of the ocean, you can use those planetary lines to be intentional about what you want to work on in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Mhm.
Oh, and I was also going to mention that it really resonated when you said about like places that you're drawn to, like it indicates where your benefics are. And I, moved around over the past few years, but I keep wanting to go back to LA, and now I'm back to LA. And then I'm like, it looks like I'm not on, but like pretty close by my Jupiter line. So
Oh,
yeah.
yes. Brandy also has her Jupiter line in LA as well. And we know how based on her life, how that can expand. But that's so cool. One thing I can say is I would love, do you know Jupiter is your benefic planet? Did you say that, or are you just saying that it just keep calling you?
I think I remember hearing somewhere that it was well placed for me, well aspected.
Oh,
Um, yeah. And I
yes.
have noticed what you were mentioning about like opportunities are going to come to you whether you're ready for them or not. Like some of them,
Mm-hmm.
as I was starting my sound healing journey, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to do it yet. And so I like almost chickened out, but now I'm kind of like getting more into it, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
popping up now that I'm back. So yeah.
Yes. I love that. Yes. So if Jupiter energy feels good and when you're there, you feel expansive, the area is good, that can potentially be, a place that, like you said, you live in because you keep going back to it. The reason why you keep going back to it is because it feels good. Jupiter probably is your benefic planet. And so every time you're there, although it could be subtle things, it just expresses itself differently when you're there. You get to be a little bit more of yourself probably when you're there. And so, depending on what other lines you have there, they're all working together to create that experience for you. So, I really love that. And I would also say, look for or follow the Jupiter line that you have, which would technically for you, like let's say if you look at the bottom and if it says Jupiter descendant, what you can do is, or if it's ascendant, what you can do is essentially what I mean by following that line is going to a different region and just looking for your Jupiter descendant line. So when you go to that place, you're going to most likely get the same energy as you would in Los Angeles.
Ooh.
Okay. So that's a way that you would do that. Now, whatever category of life it expresses itself in may be different, but it's still going to come with that same type of expansive energy for you. And you never know, the expansion may be a little bit bigger because let's say it's in your second house, and your second house is of your stability, your finances, your self-worth. You could go there and just Jupiter could also expand you with your self-worth. You're feeling yourself. You're not, allowing people to walk over you or whatever case might be. Not saying you're doing that now, but that's just like an example of how it can expand. It doesn't always have to necessarily be about your career or your finances. It could be about yourself. So if you want to be intentional about that expansion, go to a Jupiter ascendant line and see how differently it expresses. And that's how you can do that.
It's awesome. I'll definitely try that.
Yes, I would be so excited to hear about that.
Tyler, I just want to ask you what happens if we have like a city like Vancouver for me is right in between this narrow two lines of Jupiter and Pluto. So I'm guessing it's just those two influences kind of coming together and I'm in between and receiving both, right?
Yes. So another thing actually that reminds me. So you see how actually let me put it back to more crispier view. Okay. So you see how, for example, um, so you see how in her chart, like, so I can use this as an example, like Philadelphia is right in the middle of her Neptune and Mars, right? So what you can do is you can click on Philadelphia and it'll, if you come to the side over here, it'll let you know how many kilometers away you are from, oh, I'm sorry, why is it? It'll let you know how many kilometers away you are from this Venus Pluto energy here. Um, she may have, she might have like an aspect, and that's why it's saying Venus, but I took it off. So that's an example. Even if we clicked on like Norfolk, it says she's 147 kilometers from this actual Mars line. So that can kind of give you an idea of how close you're receiving the energy. And if I click here, like that would be another example. She's some kilometers in between Uranus, right? It'll show it here, Uranus descendant, and then Pluto descendant. So those are different ways that it can kind of show you how close you are. There's also, if anyone is like really, interested in astrocartography and learning it and, teaching it to other people, there's, or just for yourself, really, if you want to intentionally travel utilizing it, there's a system that's called Solar Fire. And it's one of the systems that I use when I'm doing my relocation. It allows me to drag and see the distance, how far I want to go from the actual line. It'll give that distance to me in real time. So you could, you can click on, let's say Neptune and then drag it all the way to Mars, and it'll specifically let you know how far you are. So that is that's another way that you can do that as well. Okay. There is a lot that goes
Wow.
into, oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Tyler. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say there is a lot that goes into astrocartography. We have a lot of different other lines. So these are just called the regular astrocartography lines, but there's also Paran lines that go in a longitude position, and you could be so specific with it that you, even though let's say you're near your Mars line, but you want to be within 250 miles of it, what you can do is you could even go down another scale and say, well, I want Jupiter energy near my Mars. You can look for places that have Jupiter on a particular position within that actual Mars line that you could live on so that you can get those energies. Um, that is like that's a whole another beast, but it is something that's out there for you to be able to be really, really like exact about a lot of the energy that you want, because regardless of what, you're gonna be in energies all over. So it's like, why not be as specific as you can? So that's another way too. Okay,
Oh my
so
gosh, Tyler, this has been amazing.
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you all for all of those amazing questions. Um, yeah, I really love talking about this.
Your passion comes through, that's for sure.
Thank you. I'm glad that is received. I try to explain it, as simple as I can for the time that we have. But what I can do is, like I said, Brandy, I can send you the PowerPoint that I have, and then that way you guys can kind of have a little bit of the bullet points that I talked about, because I do kind of have what the planets mean. Let me see if I can pull it up. So like, for example, I have here like what the planets, like just like a short description of what the planets mean. And then how you can go about planning a trip, checking the ascendant, and then also the exact steps written down that we just kind of went over today on how to actually pull up the map. And then I believe
Oh,
I
perfect.
also, yeah, I believe that might be it. Um, yes, that might be it. So, I do offer readings if anyone is interested in like wanting to relocate with astrocartography. That is when we would kind of get into a lot more of the nitty-gritty, kind of get a little bit detailed about exactly what it is that you want. But if you follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok and YouTube, I talk a lot about astrocartography on all three of those platforms. With TikTok, I'm able to I'm able to explain a lot more in a shorter time. So a lot of my Instagram reels may be a little bit different than TikTok, but with TikTok, it's a little expanded on a lot of the topics that I do talk about, and then also on YouTube as well. I am wrapping up my content, so there isn't. I'm not gonna say that there's not a lot, but there is definitely enough for you to binge. But I am definitely still also racking up a lot of my content about this. So if you guys are interested, you can definitely follow me on all of those platforms. You can reach out to me via DM if you have any questions about anything we talked about. I am more than happy to, to walk you through whatever it is that you need, to just kind of take a look at your own chart if you'd like to, as far as how to pull it up and things like that. But yeah, if you're interested in booking a reading with me, you can definitely find me on Etsy or follow me on the social medias, and all of the links and things like that are in my profile.
Amazing. I also put all of those things in the chat for you guys, and I will also put them in Telegram as well, so we can follow up with Tyler. Do not miss an opportunity. Seriously, if you are thinking of relocating, you're traveling, you have a big project coming up, or you're just something in your soul is saying it's time for a transformation, truly consider exploring astrophotography, booking a call with Tyler, whatever feels good, but definitely consider venturing into this area a little deeper. Any final questions for our special guest
Yes,
today?
any
Hey,
questions?
Andrea.
I haven't. Thanks,
Going
Brandy, for
once,
going
going
in the chat
twice.
because I haven't been able to.
Yeah, of course. We got you. We got you. All right, you guys. I know we went a little longer than usual, but this was so worth it. Thank you, Tyler, so much for your time and your wisdom today. I would love to invite you back if you're interested. The invitation is definitely there.
Thank you. Yes, thank
And you guys,
you.
any questions? Yeah, of course. Any questions you guys have, put them in Telegram or reach out directly to Tyler. If you put them in Telegram, I will make sure she sees it and gets it, and we'll just keep the conversation going. If you guys are all complete, I will close out today's call and we'll see you. Eva, do you have a call this week? Tomorrow? No? Okay. You'll see Eva soon next week. I think that's what she means. Yes. And I will see you guys next month and in the group. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Be safe. Be
Thanks,
well. Thank you,
everyone. Thanks for
Tyler. I'll
having
see
me.
you online as
Yes.
well.
Really cool.
Yes.
Of course. Bye, guys.